Welcome to A Word with the Girls. I'm Abby, and I'm joined with my sisters, Molly and Emily. Make sure to go follow us on Instagram at A Word with the Girls. And if you have not yet subscribed to our podcast on Spotify, go click that follow button so you don't miss an episode. We would love to hear from you. If you have any questions or even a word you would like for us to discuss, make sure you comment on Spotify or on our Instagram, and your word may be featured in the future episode. Before we dive into our word for today, let's catch up. How's everyone doing? How about what's a memory that came up on your Facebook today?
Oh, that's a fun question. That is a feature I do like on Facebook. Sometimes it reminds me.
It's nice, but also kind of sad. It's like a reminder that time's going by.
That is true.
Or
how
that
fast
you're,
it goes by.
Really old.
Well, my most recent, a year ago, I had just gotten back from Santa Cruz. I did a First Descents trip where First Descents is this organization that does like outdoor adventures for young adults with MS or cancer. And so I got to be a volunteer. I was a past participant, but I actually volunteered, and I got to volunteer in Santa Cruz for a surfing trip for young adults with MS. And that was like really, really fun. It was really special. And I had never surfed before, and it was really cool. So those pictures just make me so happy because I just like love connecting with the MS community and new people, and then trying something new and challenging myself physically. So that was like a really, really special trip.
That's awesome.
That is so cool.
Let's see. Well, I am old, so I have a lot of memories to choose from. But one that did pop up was about 13 years ago, I was in Indonesia and I was teaching 5th grade. And this group of girls was so sweet. And I ended up having, wow, you could never do this in America, but I ended up having like a 5th grade girls' night where they came over to my house and we watched the Babysitters Club movie, like the 1995 Babysitters Club movie. And it was so awesome and they loved it. And I just remember it being so special. So there were like 9 of them or something. Anyways, it was a good time. So
well, on mine, so it looks like 11 years ago we had our first sister trip in Florida.
uh-oh.
Yeah, that one was pretty epic. Including like one of our most controversial stories.
Oh man.
Most definitely.
But that one we will just need to hold off and save that one for another time for sure. But I can't believe that came up today.
Oh,
Literally 11 years ago. That story makes me physically nauseous. So
my palms are sweaty.
That story is truly like the thing that makes our relationship so special, because we were able to come back from that situation.
Yep.
So stay tuned, because you never know when that story will come up, if and when we choose that word. But
yeah, this is us teasing a very entertaining story that you're going to want to stick around for.
Yeah.
So keep listening to the podcast so that you can hear the story of what happened on our trip to Florida 11 years ago.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh my gosh.
On a happier note, Abby, do you remember Kevin and I came to visit you all, I think, in Colorado Springs? Like we went to like the Penny.
Oh, the Penny Arcade.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, how fun is that?
Yeah, because there's a picture of y'all on that like giant bike, and y'all are so cute. Like I think we were like a year into marriage and
cuties,
all that fun stuff. So so fun to look back on what's happened, you know.
Totally.
Lots of memories. But good question, Ab.
Alrighty.
Okay, I'm gonna pick number 32.
Okay. Well, that's so random. Whoa. What are the chances?
I don't know. What is it?
The word is memories, which is
Oh,
funny because we literally just
how
talked about
ironic.
Facebook memories.
That's weird.
It's kind of creepy.
Oh,
Wow.
see, this is the beauty of choosing a random word. Memories.
That's very broad.
That is very broad.
Well, for one, it makes me think of Dad is in Texas currently visiting some family down there, and he like yesterday sent us a photo or sent us a picture of a photo of Tita when she was like a little girl, which was just one, it was really cool because we've kind of mentioned Tita a little bit before. She was our dad's mom, and she was just a really remarkable lady who died quite a while ago. But this picture of her as a little girl was so crazy because she looks like Annie.
Mm-hmm.
And even today we like held the picture up to Annie, and Annie of course did a little profile for us, and they just looked so much alike. It was really wild.
Yeah, it was.
So
the cheekies. And then the little nose.
So fun.
Yeah.
Well, so speaking of Dad and Texas, I think a big memory that I will always cherish is growing up. We used to go to camp meeting, and that was always like a really fun time. So camp meeting is in West Texas, out in the middle of nowhere. And once a year, my dad's side of the family all get together, and you stay in these cabins with aluminum roofs. You have this most delicious food that's like made out in these, what would you call it?
Like open kitchens, kind of.
Yeah.
Like
it's like
open
ranch
fire.
ranch style
like
cooking.
I can like still taste and smell
it.
the biscuits.
Yeah, you can smell the biscuits and the brisket. And then we would go hike around in the bat caves and spend time with family and cousins and
Whittle.
I think that's and whittle. Oh yeah, with like Calvin and Cole. And I don't know, there was just something really, really, really special. I think that's where my love of Texas came. And I think because we were surrounded by, there were like so many cowboys. I mean, our dad grew up on a ranch and with cattle and like just super Texan, I guess. And I think I just had envisioned living that life, I think. So I always loved going to Texas, but we stopped going after a while, mostly probably because soccer took over our lives, and it was a very long road trip. Speaking of road trips, going all the way out into West Texas, but so I got to actually reconnect with all of that family when I started going to college in Texas. My first Thanksgiving, I went down and met probably 30 people that I hadn't seen in 10 years or something. It was very overwhelming, but it was really, really fun. So that is a very special memory that I will always cherish.
Well, I'm thinking about like memories. That's the one thing that is nice about social media in my mind is like it does capture things and reminds you of stuff. Which I love. There's a lot of things I don't love about social media, but it is really special to be able to look back. I mean, I'm referring to mainly my children over the last 7 years and just see how fast time has gone by. Because it's sometimes hard to remember everything that's happened in a certain time frame. And so having the memories as an option to click on your phone, it really is special to be able to do that. Special, and also it's sad. I think memories bring up like the nostalgia of things is both comforting and heartbreaking. Because you're like, oh, darn, I'll never get that back. But then also like, oh, I'm so grateful that, we had that time, or like even with like camp meeting stuff, I wish we could go back, knowing what we know now, or like our relationships now. I wish we could go back and, experience that now, knowing that we actually like each other. And, that I guess that's the purpose of memories, is that hopefully you remember them and you're fond of them. I guess not always though.
No.
obviously, but
Yeah, I think I think there's definitely a bittersweet piece to it. At the same time, because I just recently one of my memories that came up recently was from this like epic trip that we took my first year in Indonesia to the jungles of Sumatra. And the whole trip was just like so amazing and wild and like outside of my comfort zone. Um and I had written like several blog posts about it. So it was just funny because we had just been talking about my blog on the podcast, and then that memory came up. And so then I went back and read some of those posts. And it was just so interesting because that was like 22-year-old Molly who had just moved to Indonesia. And that whole period of time was like really formative for like who I have become, and like just revealing a lot of things that I was passionate about. And um so it's like that both and thing of like, man, I would love to go back there, but also I would hate to give up who I am now. Because I don't like the thought of like going back to my 22-year-old self certainly doesn't sound appealing. Going back to those moments that were really fun and those experiences that were really cool, and like even those friendships, right, that are never the same after you all move away. But so yeah, it's like that. It's just two things are true at the same time. Because it's those experiences that make us who we are. And then I just feel so lucky to have them, right? Like lucky to have those stories, and even more lucky to have like those friendships. And those friendships that have like spanned distances and life seasons and life stages and all of those things. Like it almost makes it more nostalgic because you can look back at that time and be like, wow, we were all so young and so fancy free. And now we're like in the, in the intensity of adulting. And, a lot of my friends have kids, and it's just like totally different. And, so yeah, I think there's just a lot of beauty in that. And even in the heartbreaking memories that we have, I think leaning into it and feeling that and working through it, like I think that's what we're supposed to do,
Right. And being on the other side of it, being able to see how maybe God worked through heartbreak, if that's what a memory brings up for you, or hardship. I think being able to look back and be like, Lord, thank you for being with me in that time, in that memory, because I'm thankful for where I am now.
I don't know if you all do this, but I love journaling. I have like boxes and boxes of journals. And we sang a song at church today, and it was about Ebenezer, and I can't really remember the story biblically, like what happened in the Bible, but it's the idea of like stacking stone by stone, like these stones of remembrance to remember God's faithfulness. And I feel like that's why I journal, just to be reminded of like who God is, and like my prayers and the way he's answered, or the way he's carried me through. And I feel like as I prepare, I'm going to be speaking at this women's event and talking about breaking through isolation, which then takes me back to memories that probably aren't, probably a fun thing to reminisce on, of like those moments of feeling in like a really deep place of despair, or feeling lonely, but then also being reminded of God's faithfulness and how he pulled me out of that, and and then hoping that will encourage and bring hope to other women that it is possible. But yeah, memories definitely have like this layered of like joy and grief interlaced with each other. And but I think, I don't know, we always have like this hope that kind of anchors us even in the midst of all of that. So I'm kind of looking forward to sort of like, going back and seeing how, God worked through all that.
For sure.
And I think memories just are the reminder of like you're living life right now. Like,
Mhm.
this is all you get. This is what's happened. Like, what are you doing with it? You know, I think it just helps put things into perspective of like, you're living the life that you're supposed to live, you know, that you dreamed of memories ago. You know, I think of like, yeah, when I was first married, and I'm living the life now that I feel like it just really puts life into that perspective that like, gosh, it goes so fast. And you add kids into that perspective, and it's a visual representation of how fast life goes.
Mhm.
And like with a baby, I mean, you're counting the months. So like 6 months have gone by, and I'm like, oh my gosh, 6 months of a baby and 6 months of my big kids. It's not like they stop growing just because I have an infant. And it just like, even looking back over the memories of Annie when she was a newborn, I'm like, oh my gosh, it just goes so fast. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I
would
think it's
say.
interesting too, like my 22-year-old self would have never imagined that I would still be single at 38.
Mhm.
So I think in the same way that like what you, Abby, just said for yourself is true, I think it can also be kind of the opposite if you're like, wow, this is not at all what I thought my life would look like at this age. And how do I feel about that?
Yeah.
So yeah. So I think there's something that happens there when you're thinking about memories and like going back in time. And then also like, I feel like my single girlfriends and I do this a lot. Like, what would it be like for us to go back and talk to our 22-year-old self? And what would we say? I think it was one of the questions on our rapid fire too. Like, what would you say to your teenage self? But I think it's a really interesting thing to think about of like, what would you do differently? But then, you know, changing something up back then would have pretty drastic changes for now too. And so I think for me, that's kind of where I always come back to like, wow, this is so not what I thought I would be at this age. But at the same time, there's nothing that I regret. And I think there's a lot of value in thinking about, you know, what does that mean? And how do I reconcile those things? And what's really important and all of that. And that's when going back in time is actually really helpful of like, no, remember you were pretty, like I learned early on that I was passionate about teaching children and especially teaching, you know, vulnerable and marginalized children. And so in that way, like it is true. I'm doing exactly what I sought out to do. And that's really cool. So, but that's not a place that you get to if you're living in a place of bitterness and resentment and regret. You know, because those are pretty dark places to sit. And I think until you kind of push through to the other side, it's hard to get out of that place of bitterness, right?
I feel like it's choosing to look through a lens of gratitude in where you've come, even if it has been hard. You know, I feel like, because gratitude is you got to dig deep for that.
For sure.
Not everybody does. Some people, you know, they have grateful hearts and it's easy, but I find it's easier to be cynical than it is to, you know, to choose to be grateful for, you know, where you've come. And
yeah, what do you think about those ideas, Em? You know, your younger self looking ahead to see where you're at today and what that feels like. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess kind of like similar to you, Mal, I think I'd envision maybe my life looking different. Maybe we would have kids and like all of that. But at the same time, I would have never had any of the experiences that I've had. And I haven't I feel like God just has taught me a lot in these last, you know, I don't know, I guess we kind of did like a recap of 10 years. And I wouldn't trade it, because I think it's like really given me a strength and a resilience and a depth in my relationship with, the Lord and my husband, and just like becoming more self-aware of myself. But I think gratitude is definitely a really hard thing to find or to choose when you are not in a good place. Like, it's so easy to be like, wow, life is great. I like have this wonderful job and I have this lovely husband and we just got this new house. But when you're in the midst of like the valley and of suffering or grief or a major transition where you're feeling lonely and all those things, like, it is tough to be grateful for anything. And I think that's when you have to be reminded of like, it's the little things too. Like, man, Lord, I'm so thankful for a roof over my head. Man, Lord, I'm so thankful for a paycheck or friends or a cup of coffee. Like, it can be super, or just the sun is out today. Sometimes it has to be like that minuscule to really shift your perspective. So yeah, but yeah, there's just something about reminiscing on memories. And I think I would like to deem myself as the family historian, but there's something about like capturing moments in pictures too that I just like really, really love doing. And even like videos. I think sometimes I wish I would have gotten people's like voices or them in action rather than just like a photo. I don't know. So it's just something I really love doing because I think it's just fun to look back on. And I mean, I would look at pictures of Millie when she was like itty bitty, and I feel like that was just yesterday.
I know.
So
I know, it's so crazy. And that's why with memories, it's like both heartbreaking and you're like, oh gosh, I'll never get that back ever. But then it forces you in the now to be like, okay, like,
yeah,
I get to
present
today. Yeah. It just, time is fleeting for sure.
Yeah. And I feel like, I don't know if it's something about like my personality, because I'm like always like, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? That being present is really challenging for me. Like, whether it's, man, I get to speak at this conference. This is so cool. I almost like miss it, rather than like really soaking in like every detail about something, or even like our wedding. Like, I mean, I remember it, but I don't remember the string quartet or, things like that. And so sometimes I'm like, I really want to like be intentional with like being present, which means like putting my phone away, which means like sitting and having a cup of coffee with friends without distractions of other things,
Well, and I think a challenge too is, as wonderful as it is to capture moments, like as a picture, it's like capturing it just for you.
Mental picture.
Like that's the hard thing, I think, with times right now. You can capture everything. And then, you can look back at it on your phone, but then it's like, were you actually there in the moment when you were given that gift of being there and being with that person,
I do think it's interesting that you are the historian, though, given that it's such a challenge for you to be
totally
present in the moment. I feel like that's actually really cool because it probably helps you be more present because you're looking to capture what's going on. And so,
well, and you really love your people. Like, you love your people and you love when everyone's together. And so you're like, this is what we're going to do. Take family pictures at every destination and moment. And it's so valuable.
No, it's special. And I think the Lord gave me Kevin specifically because now I'm given a quota of pictures when we're together. He's like, you get 2 more pictures and then you're done. And then we're just going to like enjoy whatever we're doing. So I have to like choose wisely on what pictures I want with him because he'll only do so many and then he cuts me off.
Oh, that's funny. All right. I have one more question. If you could go back to a specific memory, what would it be? Maybe not like super specific, but like season. That might be a little easier.
I think for me, it's a feeling that I get, and it's it's Lone Tree. Again, I had mentioned Lone Tree in one of our previous podcasts, but it's when Alex and I's paths crossed again.
Hmm.
And I just remember feeling so drawn to him and not sure why, and being like, I know him. How do I know him? And I just think it would be so cool to go back to my 18-year-old self. And at that time he was 24, and just to like relive our interactions. Because there were moments where at this camp, the other camp leaders or whatever, they would make Alex and I feel so awkward. They forced us to drive in a car together one time, and Alex was so mad at them and was so uncomfortable. And it just were these feelings of awkward, yet like, my gosh, this guy, there's something about him. And knowing what I know now, I got to marry him and now we have a family. But I would just love to go relive those feelings.
That's awesome.
And yeah, that would just be so fun.
That's good.
Well, it's funny you say that, because me and being the historian, when Kevin and I met, we met at a camp for kids whose parents live with MS. And there was a photographer there who was capturing random moments of camp. And there are moments of Kevin staring at me or us interacting, like having very specific
my
conversations in picture, not knowing. And so it's just so special to have these pictures that kind of sort of captured our first interactions, not knowing that like anything would ever happen, mostly because I put him in the friend zone because he was shorter than me and in the military. But so yeah, it's just like really sweet. And so there's like funny pictures that I look back and I like want to put words to, is like, there's like a picture of me holding my hands at like this really short distance. And I just want to think like he's about this short, but I don't even know if that's what I was talking about, but that's
Oh
like
my
what it looks like as if I'm
gosh.
talking. So anyways,
That's funny.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
But it's funny that we both met our husbands at camp.
That is so funny. Okay, what about you,
That's
Mo?
interesting. Yeah, a period of time that I always look back fondly on is Indonesia, particularly like my last couple years there. I just, there was like a group of friends. There were 4 of us, and it was just like such a sweet time in our friendship, because it was in the early years of it, and we were all like 3 of us were single, 1 was married, no kids. It was just like this beautiful kind of fancy free time in our friendship. And now the 4 of us live in like different parts of the world, and when we get together, it's so sweet and so special. And we just like reminisce so much about that period of time, because I mean, we were on adventures all the time, and taking motorbike trips and eating really amazing food and solving all the world's problems, and having really hard faith conversations about like who we, because in Indonesia I was exposed to so many different ways of thinking, particularly within like the missions community, and what that all looked like. And I was so far outside my comfort zone. And I think there's something that leads to like such deep and special relationships. So even outside like those, the 4 of us, the relationships that I developed during that time were just so special. And we had all just kind of become sort of like family there. And it was just really cool. So I would love to be able to, if I could snap my fingers and go back to, we called it the Wangsa house. There was a house that where like 4 girls lived in, and it was just like full of music and flowers and baking and laughing. And yeah, that's where I would go.
So fun.
It was fun.
Wow.
So yeah, shout out to the Indo girls. Yeah.
I think when you like live life with people like that, like whether it's in college or something like that, the kind of relationships and bonds you make, you can't recreate in normal life. It's really hard, because you're literally living together and you're living life together. I think that's why it's so important to like really find those, deeper communities, so that you could
For sure And it's never the same, right? Like you can never recreate it, which is, again, kind of goes back to that, like, it's really sad and also really beautiful because we get to be the versions of ourselves that we are today and learn from each other in that way, which is like beyond awesome. So yeah, it's probably a little bit like, there's a Sarah Groves song called Painting Pictures of Egypt, like the way that you look back and you're like, it was so good back then, you know, like you look back on memories and kind of forget a lot of the hard stuff.
Right.
So I think sometimes reminiscing, you do that a little bit. You're like, oh, well, actually, it wasn't all rainbows and roses. It was
right.
There was some tough stuff that happened at that time too. But anyways, yeah, I agree. Friendships are important.
Well, and I think that makes our relationship so special that I'm just so grateful for. You know, growing up, we were not the best of friends. Like we are very different, and I don't think we really appreciated each other and our differences. I think we clashed more than we figured out how we fit together. And so I'm just so thankful that over the years and over all the memories and the hards and the highs and lows, that we've been able to like really make a special bond between us that I'm just forever grateful for. So,
well, and how cool that this podcast is like even like bringing up memories that not all of us remember and bringing up stuff of like, oh, I totally forgot about that. Like there's something really cool about even this situation, just like making space for that kind of conversation stuff too. It's really cool.
Well, and how that we can like live the same memories, but the experiences also might be very different, I think, which is also so interesting. Like I may have had like the most grandiose magical time at camp meeting, and then for other people it'd be like, wow, I did not have that same feeling. And so it's just so cool that like we have our own unique experiences, whatever you walk through, even if it is the same in the same household or whatever. Well, I can't wait to talk about our memory from 11 years ago in the future someday.
Oh man, that is a brutal one. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us on A Word with the Girls. This is a podcast where one word sparks conversation. The three of us really believe in the power of connection and stories. So we're handing it off to you guys. Now it's your turn to take our word today, memories, and take it to your people. See where the conversation goes. Feel free to let us know how that conversation goes. You can do that in the comments on our YouTube or on Instagram or in Spotify as well in that question and answer section. So we're grateful for each other and for you.
Love you more. Bye.
Okay, love you more. Bye.
Also, I love that this is an emoji now.
It is?
Yeah.
Look. No. I told you.
That's weird.
I think
I told you.
Oh my God.
You just have to like hold it.
I think, do you have to do it? I think you have to do it. What if you do the peace sign? What does that mean?
Birthdays.
We go like this.